All right, fellas, we had I'll tell you, a game of the week as if any last week with Bama and Georgia. Everything that this game was hyped up to be, it ended up being. A lot of interesting thought processes and notes coming out of this game. I mean, Bama gets up to a 28-0 start. Georgia's continued struggles at the beginning of football games and then having to roar back into it in the second half. I mean, I'll go as far as to say this: Georgia is definitely one of the most impressive teams coming out of halftime. But as good as that team is, that should never be what you have to do every single week, week in and week out. And that definitely, I think, opens some eyes for them, especially with the remainder of their schedule looking how it's looking. But y'all are the Bama fans. Y'all tell me y'all's thought process. I got a couple of notes that I know I want to hit on throughout it. But hey, just give me a recap of what was going through y'all guys' mind on a on a very interesting and exciteful Saturday night.
Man, for real, to be honest with y'all, I started last week off saying that I feel like college football hasn't been here yet. Well, it's goddamn here now because that's exactly the game that would kick something off to make it feel like a college football atmosphere. And there was so many points I thought that Bama would be able to take advantage of when it comes to Georgia, but nothing that I predicted was going to be what I saw on Saturday night. I was like, that's something that I think that Bama has to study itself on that, how they started that game right there. How do we do this every single game? Because if Bama can duplicate that every single week, week in and week out, which I know is almost impossible, but they're not going to lose a game. So that thing right there was so interesting on that part for Bama's start. And it's exactly what I thought it would be, just a Jalen Milroe show early in the game. Even with him throwing the balls, like I said, something that I think that he wouldn't be scared to do. I thought the way they just came out and dominated Georgia on an upfront standpoint was extremely impressive. Extremely impressive. Now, my true analysis of this game isn't as interesting, and I could be wrong in looking at it, but I don't think that, to me, I really wasn't that impressed with Georgia, even at the end of it all. I truly thought Bama took their gas on. I know that's me as a Bama fan, just kind of delusional in that standpoint, but I thought more than anything, Bama took their gas off the pedal and they didn't know how to run the clock out. That's what I feel like. I felt like they didn't know really how to say, "Oh, snap, we up this early. Let us just get out of here with a safe win." And that's what kind of happened really going into the fourth quarter. I know a lot of momentum changed in the end of the third, but it was really the fourth quarter that Georgia just took advantage of and just really just getting three and outs in big plays. That's not a winning recipe for all season long with me for Georgia. I know they got to get healthy. I know they got a lot of things going for them. And I think Georgia's going to be the team that we thought they are at the end of the year. But for this game right here, I don't think they were really that impressive from the start all the way to the finish. Now, the game was impressive. The magnitude and the roller coaster aspect of it was, but I thought it was so much more of Bama mistakes even late in the game rather than Georgia just being this dominant team that just roaring back from an underdog standpoint. So, man, there's so many aspects of this game that we can really touch on. Ryan Williams, Jalen Milroe, Sabian Brown for defensive cornerback. Man, we got a lot of players that's going to be big time players coming deep in the season. That's going to be making big time plays like this Saturday. So, Sean, I really want to see what you got to say about it because from Bama's standpoint, I think you can't start the game more perfect. We got to finish it all 60 minutes, but I don't think you start the game more perfect. And I really wasn't that impressed with Georgia. So just tell me what you think.
I would definitely have to agree. So I'm gonna start off here with my perspective. We talked about Kalen DeBoer and the fact that Georgia didn't have a whole lot of film work on Kalen DeBoer in Alabama. And I think that's the bug that really got him messed up early in the game because Bama did come out in a few different sets. They came out. Milroe was more of a focal point running the ball, which Kirby Smart had already alluded to the fact that he didn't know how he was going to attack Alabama's offense from a defensive perspective. And it's obvious that what he chose to attack was wrong in the first half. It was wrong, dead wrong. He completely missed their whole staff. Everything they prepared for and everything they game plan for was completely wrong. And I think that has everything to do with the fact that Kalen DeBoer and his coaching staff played their first 3 games extremely vanilla, regardless of the outcome of the game. They didn't give them too much. Now, I'm going to take this 1, 2, 3 steps deeper than that in the same vein. Bama's probably going to play Georgia again at some point in time in this season, whether it's in the SEC championship game or whether it's somewhere in the playoff. I do believe Georgia is a playoff team. I do think Georgia is good enough to make it to the SEC championship. I do believe Bama's also going to be there. Texas is going to be there too. So we gotta sort all this stuff out at the end of the day. But I think Kalen DeBoer has been extremely smart in how he attacked these first 4 games of the season. Now, Kalen DeBoer, they got up 28-0 in the first half with a game plan. After halftime, Georgia made some significant adjustments that allowed them to hold Bama up. Now, I do think it was Bama's play calling, but this is to my point. I believe that Kalen DeBoer felt like he had a 28-0 lead. He could call the game the same way he did in the first half and survive. He did. He almost didn't, but he did. But what happened is all Kalen DeBoer gave Kirby Smart and the rest of the nation is the same film we saw in the first half of this game. Okay? That's all he gave up, offensively and defensively. Kirby Smart, right? He had to give up a little more than he wanted to beat Kentucky. He had to bring some stuff out the bag to finish Kentucky off. He had to bring everything out the bag just to try to finish Bama off with a loss. Okay? My point is, Kalen DeBoer is still working with a vanilla playbook for the rest of the season. He done got through Georgia. Right? So you're watching film on Alabama, you're going to watch game 1 through game 4. You're going to see a lot of the same. Kirby Smart was forced to show all his cards last week and this week. I don't think DeBoer has shown anything yet. I don't think he's shown anything yet. I think Kalen DeBoer beat Oregon twice last year with the same setup. Same setup, right? This is what we're figuring out what you call him, Drew Debo. We're figuring out what kind of coach Debo is. I'm telling you, this man is keeping as close to the vest as he possibly can because he has a quarterback that's impossible to defend. If you choose one thing, he's gonna hit you with another. If you don't choose this one, he's gonna hit you with that one. He's got weapons on the outside. Ryan Williams is incredible, but he also has other weapons too. Defensively, the way they played that game defensively in the first half was absolutely phenomenal. I saw pressures coming from different places. Before this game, Bama was the least. They pressured the quarterback the least out of 132 teams in Division I football. No pressure whatsoever. So they did throw some pressure in and threw Carson back off, and it was obvious that Georgia was off their game. So let's talk about the next team that has to play Alabama. What are you looking at? How are you going to attack them and beat them based off what you've seen on film in the first 4 games? One of these games being against arguably one of the best teams in the country in Georgia. I'm looking at this and saying this was a masterclass by Kalen DeBoer and his coaching staff because he still has probably 85 to 90% of his playbook in his back pocket that he has not even shown yet. Now, he gambled by not doing a whole lot more in the second half from the first, but he won the gamble and he still got all his tricks in his bag. And for that reason, I say, Alabama, beyond Georgia here, is going to continue to be a problem, even from a coaching perspective. You got better athletes in Tuscaloosa. You got the best quarterback in the nation, in my opinion. You got the best wide receiver in the nation, in my opinion. Your offensive line is absolutely incredible. Your secondary is young, but they're growing. You know what I'm saying? The problems that Bama got to fix is in the back, is on the back end on defense. And the one thing that this season will allow you the opportunity to do is do that because it's a long season. Listen, from a coaching, I'm talking coaching. Alabama is, I'm going to go ahead and say it right now, miles ahead of everybody else. And that is your boy Debo. That's him. He did it last year at Washington with less talent and almost did the whoop de whoop and won the whole thing. Now he's in Tuscaloosa with more talent and the best quarterback in the country and the best wide receiver in the country. He's an offensive genius, and he got all his cards. He's holding close to his chest. Ain't showing nobody yet. Man, everybody else look out. This is about Alabama's about to be a legitimate problem for anybody else on their schedule from a schematic perspective.
Yeah, I'll tell you something else that was interesting about this game. If you go into this game and I tell you that Jalen Milroe is going to throw for 374 and also rush for 117. And then Ryan Williams, we discussed this at last week for our preview for this game. If Ryan Williams was going to have that explosive game again, like he's been having in multiple games this season, ending with 177 yards receiving, you would say, oh, they just outscored Georgia. But it wasn't so much just that. It's that in the first half, the defense was so dominant. You were able to get your turnover margin was 4-1. And honestly, should have been 6 because Etienne had a fumble also. And I forgot the other guy who had a fumble during the game also that was able to recover it back too. But you got 3 interceptions and then a fumble by Carson Beck. So you got the defense showed up and shut them down, albeit Georgia's slow at beginning of games, but still, they're still a very talented team. And it almost seemed like in the first half, like Bama was just able to say, we don't care what you try to do. We don't care what you're going to do. You can't do it against us. We're going to be able to do whatever we want to do to you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And at the same time, you shut the run down again. They had a team total of 80 rushing yards for Georgia. You can't let that happen in these big time games and think that you're still going to skate by and come out okay at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's really interesting to me when you really think about the totality of the game, just because I think that Bama's defense is the really part of the team that really took his foot off the gas. And I think that's one thing that was, to me, purposeful. Because they came out with a defensive game plan, and I don't think Georgia really could have predicted at all. And Sean, that goes to your point of Debo being able to hide his cards from everybody, really not being able to show the whole deck at certain times. But I think at halftime, they was like, okay, let's just play like a vanilla defense to try to contain Georgia, which allowed them to get the momentum they needed to keep that train rolling. Now, Georgia, don't get me wrong, they got so much talent in their team. Once they get rolling, it's hard to stop them. But the key to
Mm-hmm.
this game, which I thought it was going to be self-inflicted wounds about, though, is about who got to a faster start. And Bama's defense to me was the bigger part of the first half rather than the offense. The offense was just, to me, I was just like, yeah, Georgia don't got no answer to it. They just really don't have no answer. And I don't think that Georgia really has answers to it.
Yeah.
I think what we saw in the second half is a gradual shift of momentum. It wasn't something where Georgia really just found a answer to the question and said, we're going to shut this down and be an end all, end all. I think in the second half, if it was a more tighter game, then you would have definitely saw more flash, more running from Jalen Milroe, more explosive things that we would have that still would have been effective throughout the whole entirety of the game, just because there's certain things that are so hard to stop. I don't know if it was the second or the third touchdown, but that it was like a quarterback sweep left. It was like, I mean, it was so much open field with big blockers in front of you. Not many teams are going to be able to stop that unless you have true eye discipline and the right players on the field at the time because not no receivers blocking on the edge. You got pulling linemen leading Jalen Milroe, which is just a scary thought to have. So, I mean, I think for Georgia, you really got to understand that we gave a good fight to get back in the game. But we got so much to fix if we want to be able to still beat this team in the future. Now, Sean, to your point, I don't know if I would love to see another Georgia and Alabama matchup this season. But Georgia is really going to be the only team that can answer that question if it is, because they got 2 huge games that
Mm-hmm.
are going to decide the SEC championship. They truly are. I think Bama just has to beat 2 people, Tennessee, LSU, and they can don't make trip up on Auburn and then get to the SEC championship with a cakewalk. But I don't think those are going to be easy tasks. But I think that Georgia's tasks are way harder, having to go to certain places, like going to Austin, Texas. Just like your point, I think Bama is one of the teams that's coaching wise, are miles ahead of people. But Texas is not too far behind, if not 1-1. So I mean, it's so many teams that I think that for the rest of the season that this game is going to impact. And for the way that Alabama handled it, it was kind of like it's kind of like I hate to put this analogy for anybody to take it and run with it, but it's kind of like the big brother beating up on the little brother. And at a point in the fight, he's kind of like, I'm really tired of fighting you. I'm kind of looking on what's next. Like, what's next for me to do after this? And then you get a couple of licks in. He got a couple of licks in on him. And that's kind of the analogy that I think when it comes to this game right here. When I think about how Bama just really dominated and controlled Georgia in the first half. Man, I don't care which team it is. Flip the script on a turnover battle, Bama's going to lose this game. Georgia cannot do turnover battles against really anybody in this conference. I think they're going to be in a winning position. But Kirby Smart, I think, it's not many times where I look at him on the sideline on a national televised game and he just says, I really don't know what to do. And I saw that in multiple clips in this game where he's got to tell his guys just to hang in there. But like we said last week when it talks about the coaches, we did not believe that Kirby Smart was a true X's and O's guy. He's a motivator. So the only time he could get to his team, Sean, and to motivate them was at halftime. That's the only time he can get to him and motivate him. And then gave a great motivating speech afterward to make sure that team's gonna have his momentum. But that's who he is. He hit a coach that came with schemes and plays that he was just not ready for on both sides of the ball, which is shocking information to me. So stat wise, I don't really think it tells the story of this game because it looks too even when you look at the stats. I think this game is of course tale of two halves, but I think Bama to me is so much more infuriating coming out of this game. They're such the better team coming out of this game rather than Georgia. Everybody believes Georgia's still going to be impactful, and I think that's true. But the point of where people thought Bama was going to go before this game to where people think Bama's going to go now after this game, we got to show for the rest of the season. And people got to watch out for that tide. They coming. They really coming for the top.
Yep. And I'm going to end my discussion on this is where I stayed is coaching. If you are a team that has to play Georgia in the next couple of weeks, let's take Auburn for example this week. We'll talk about this in a little bit, but I'll graze over it here. Hugh Freeze has all the film he needs. All the film he needs to build a game plan against Georgia because they had to empty the tank to try to win this game. Yeah. If you're playing Bama and you're looking at film, even of the Georgia game, I think Debo got some other stuff still sitting around that he can call in critical moments that will completely catch you way off guard with what he's got over there. Debo has found a way to win games and keep his game plan close to his vest. Kirby Smart, whether it's Kentucky, who he had to almost beat, he had to fight to win that game. He had to pull some plays out of the playbook he didn't want to pull out. I promise you he did to beat Kentucky. And I promise you he pulled the whole playbook out against Alabama and still lost. Film. Everybody got film on everything Georgia got. You still ain't got half of what Bama got. To me, that's the problem for everybody in the country that's got to end up messing with Alabama from here on out. Debo is holding plays. Kirby had let all his go. So we'll see how this plays out, but that's my take on how it's going to play out for Georgia and Bama all the way through the end.
Yeah, one quick point on that, Sean, though. I think that's Debo's career, though. When you really look at his career, if I'm really trying to game plan for Bama, I really have to, in my opinion, I have to go back and watch Washington just as much as I'm watching this year. Because what really happened was Debo was taking 3-star guys and 4-star guys, and he got them to a national championship. Mm-hmm. With the skill set he's able to put in the steal in the offense and the defense, now he's got them giving 4 stars mainly and 5-star guys. He's like, okay, cool. The very left we was running at Washington was a 3-yard play at Bama. That's a 10, 13-yard play. So he's like, all right, cool. Hey, I see him smile on the sideline sometimes. I just think he's just so happy to be in the position he's in because he's like, man, look at the guys that are out here making plays. Now he's gonna have to truly show his recruiting aspect, which I think he's already kind of shown on be able to continue this atmosphere and continue these type of players. But I think he is I'm not gonna say better coach, but I think he knows how to manage certain things better than Kirby Smart because Kirby Smart, I think, has been gifted his whole career. We really haven't seen Kirby Smart at a smaller school make that school great and then transition to a great school and make them even better. You was on Nick Saban's squad. You learned from Nick Saban. You learned everything you need to know from Nick Saban. Thank him from the way he's treated you and the opportunities he's able to provide for you getting to Georgia. But we've seen you at the top of the top your whole career. Debo has fought hand and foot there. And I think that means so much more on how he knows how to manage certain things, and he's seeing that in these type of games. So the rest of the season is going to be it's just a fun watch because I think this season Bama is playing with house money. I really don't. If they lose, they're gonna say it's because Nick Saban wasn't here. If they win, it's gonna say because Nick Saban recruited all that team and Debo just came in and benefited on the national championship. So I think if that's the way we are, in any game is just like go out there and play your heart out. We're probably gonna come out with a win, and we're gonna see where the season leads us to, man. But there's so much to really focus on when it comes to Bama. It's almost like you have to do his own true podcast on just Bama as a team that cover it all. So it's so fascinating, so interesting to watch. But I thought they handled Georgia the way I thought it was laying out for him to do it, but to see him just wash it like that at the start and kind of just put the game away to a point where even with Georgia's comeback, I felt like I never really got nervous about the comeback. I was like, even when they got up, I was like, well, Bama about to go down and score. I
Too
didn't
They
much
think
can't stop
time.
him. They
There's
can't
too much
stop him.
time on the
I
clock.
don't think it's gonna be a one play touchdown, but I'm really thinking like, I mean, if Bama really puts down a game plan to drive the ball down the field, I think they're gonna do it.
Yeah.
Nothing that Georgia showed me throughout the whole game says if Bama's really trying their hardest, that it's gonna happen. I thought truly Bama in the second half, middle of the third quarter, coming out of halftime, they were just like shocked as well. They were like, "Hey, we up big. We just got to maintain it," which is the
Hmm.
wrong mindset to have against a two-time championship team. They can come back and win, but I thought you saw so much grit, and I think you saw the clear to me. No shade to anybody else in the running, but I thought you saw to me the clear Heisman Trophy winner and what you have to say as a true most dominant player in the country, top three most dominant player in the country right now, and Jalen Milroe, just to me, making his stamp on that game. And I think if that's what's to come for the rest of the season, I don't see a team that's going to stop it. Maybe Texas, but I don't think Texas defense is going to be able to stop that. I just,
Yeah.
man, we got so much to be in tune for this for the next rest of the
Yeah.
season.
And one last thing, we touched on it last week, but does this turn the conversation when it comes to Kirby Smart over when we hinted at it? Because before it was like, hey, is it just the fact that he can't beat Nick Saban? Or is it now like he can't get over the hump of Bama? Is the Bama hurdle just too much for him to get over on a consistent basis where it's been for the taking for him to take it ever since they won those back-to-back national championships to say, hey, is it going to be Georgia's time? Is Georgia going to be that new team that for a decade everybody looked at it and said, hey, that's them, just like we have Bama, and we're still talking about Bama. And like I said, he's called them a couple times, but it's never been that consistent beating of when they come into this game. Oh, is Georgia gonna win it all day? I think everybody was like, "Hey, Bama's gonna fight you," especially it being at Bama. And it'll be interesting to keep a note on that if they do end up seeing each other again this season to see how's it turn out. Because now you have a whole season because it won't be until the SEC championship game but it'll be a whole season. And then at the top of that, you have a game already played with these players against each other to try to game plan with. And like you said, Drew, he's not a strategist. He's not an X and O's guy. He's a motivator. Where are we at right there? Is this going to cause for if the season goes downhill? Do you make the change with the coordinators and go after a splash, big name coordinator hire to come and run your offense? But it's going to be interesting to kind of keep an eye on from that standpoint of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna answer that real quick, Sean, because I want to hear what you got to say on my point. But I think Van is a bigger question than that. I don't think it's a Nick Saban or a Bama issue, and I kind of think that's what was proven to me in that aspect. I think it's when Kirby Smart goes against a team that has just as much talent as him. Now, in the past, we really haven't seen too many teams that can have that because they've been such the cream of the crop when it comes to talent. The only team you can even say that was near to Georgia's talent level is Bama, which is why I think they struggle against Bama. But I think they're gonna be able to answer that question later down in the season. I think Tennessee is gonna be a team where I think Georgia still has more talent than Tennessee, but I think their secondary got exposed. And I think you have a five-star quarterback who's gonna be ready to challenge you in a way that you probably haven't been challenged in a couple years from a standpoint passing quarterback in a while. So that's going to be something new for Kirby Smart. And then the big test is going to be Texas because I don't think Georgia has anything more talented than Texas on the other side. So I think there's going to be two games right there that's going to be able to answer that question by the end of be all and say, okay, cool, maybe it is just a Bama problem, but I think it's a bigger issue than that. I think it is true when both teams are evenly matched. Kirby Smart can't have a game plan outside of just smash mouth football, which to me is still motivation because you got to motivate somebody to go smash the wall every single play. I think that's his main issue. So Sean, I do want you to see about that, but I think he has the talent to overcome when it comes to being able to beat teams that are equivalent to him.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I attribute all of this and what Kirby Smart's going through right now. And I feel bad for the guy because, Phil Mickelson would have more majors if it wasn't for Tiger Woods, right? Charles Barkley would probably have an NBA championship if it wasn't for Michael Jordan, right? So would John Stockton and Karl Malone. There's so many great coaches and great players that have excelled in their sport to a level to where they should be champions, but they just happened to play in an era to where there was just somebody else that, just believe it or not, was just that much better than them on game day, right? And I hate to think that this is the bug that Kirby Smart is going to be dealt with. You know what I'm saying? But it very well could be. It very well could be. It happened to Dabo at Clemson. Everybody kind of anointed him as the next coming, but then he kind of got pushed back down after he beat Bama a couple times. Ohio State really wasn't able to get over the hump after they won the championship against Bama with Zeke or whatever the case may be. Sometimes you just have these squads, and what sucks for everybody else is that Alabama potentially has little to no drop off after Nick Saban. Yeah. That in itself, at a very high level, could really cause a lot of really good coaches and a lot of really good coaches and a lot of really good players to not end up reaching their full potential in regards to championships just because Bama was just in the effing way. And when Nick Saban retired, I think a lot of folks breathed a big breath of fresh air. Kirby Smart probably being the one that breathed the biggest breath of fresh air. But what happened? He got beat again by Bama. So, Kirby Smart, his issue may be deeper than Saban, than Debo. Like you said, Drew, it could be when talent meets talent, I'm not as good of a coach. Who, you know what I'm saying? It could be that. But I worry about everybody else. Everybody else. I don't know if anybody else can deal with this. Tennessee may be the next best thing that could come around to make something happen with the generational talent that they have. But Georgia just seems to be ordinary to me right now. And Georgia has honestly been ordinary to me for a long time. A great team, great, well coached, great athletes, but not elite on all cylinders at all times in big game situations. And we can go back to 4th and 23 and talk about this. We've got nothing but evidence and history to support the fact that Kirby just can't do it, right, in those situations. But, who knows? That's what makes the game great. But, I think it's going to be a very intriguing season. I think Texas being thrown in this mix is going to throw a wrench. The fact that Texas and Georgia have to play in Austin. If Sark squashes Kirby in Austin, I think Kirby spirals from there, but we'll talk about that when we get there. But I think Kirby's like, dang, I made it to the mountaintop and I can see what's on the other side. But dang, I can't get back. And it's because there's just too much better in front of me. And that would freaking suck for Kirby Smart. But I think that's kind of where we're going.
But for Georgia fans out there, don't get too sad because the top of the mountaintop was two back-to-back championships. You got what you was looking for. You just can't get the reign that Nick Saban had, and that's never gonna happen. I don't know how many coaches in our history or our future are gonna be what Nick Saban was to college football as a totality. But I think you will have coaches that can do what Georgia did, get their little couple years, take advantage of them. But at the end of the day, man, this season is going to be a tall tale for Georgia. You got to think. Last year we didn't even get a chance to go to the playoffs. And this year, depending on matchup wise, early in that playoff run, we might get bounced as well too. So 2 years back to back championship, 2 years without even getting to the game. That's the big question for Georgia fans. So I think we got a lot to watch for this season. But this game was the set off that college football needed to really wake everybody up and say, this is the level of competition you're gonna have to play at if y'all think y'all gonna really take home that national championship. So man, we got some national championship team. I think two national championship potential teams Saturday, and I think that's what we got to keep watching on both teams. So roll tide with that one, but man, Georgia got a lot of work on for the next couple of weeks. It's not gonna get easier.